Imagine a world where magical creatures, incredible sorcerers, and sword-wielding heroes live side by side. A world where the amazing energy called magic can allow you to do many things once thought impossible. In this place, called the Heroes' Continent, all those are a reality. However, all is not peaceful in this land. From the demon race rose an all-powerful demon queen that wages war with every other race on the continent. Using her overwhelming strength, she was able to crush every empire that stood in her way. Quickly, various races fell under her control until all that was left was the human race. Although they remained steadfast in their resistance against the demon queen's rule, they were weakened by the constant internal strife and rebellions that eventually led to the human empire's collapse. With the human race gone, nothing else is standing in the way between Elizabeth the Demon Queen and complete dominance over the Heroes' Continent. In the human empire, we are greeted by the sight of a priest struggling to stand as he faces off against a human figure respectfully standing next to the throne that Elizabeth took for herself. The priest's guards have long fallen under the Demon Queen's attacks. The priest looks at Elizabeth in rage, clearly staying defiant. He loudly claims that although her armies have defeated the human empire, she still hasn't won. According to legend, a hero will rise from the humans and defeat her in battle. Hearing this, the Demon Queen's servant kicks the priest across the face. The man looks at him smugly, intimately calling him Teacher Barrow. Turns out the servant was the ex-prince of the human empire, Prince Malfoy, who betrayed his kingdom by murdering his father and allying himself with the demons. Barrow feels betrayed after seeing the person he worked so hard to cultivate into a hero of the human race become a servant for the other side, and berates him. Hearing more of his yapping further annoys Prince Malfoy, so he decides to silence him once and for all. Reaching out his hand, it transforms into a large and hideous gooey claw, ready to take the priest's life. But just before the claw could touch him, the Demon Queen, who was watching the whole ordeal go down, orders Prince Malfoy to stay his hand. Prince Malfoy quickly stops and kneels as Elizabeth approaches the priest. With a domineering aura, Elizabeth then orders the priest to properly explain the prophecy, or else she will make him suffer 1,000 fates worse than death. With a shaken voice, the priest explains that there is a sword embedded in stone in the main hall. It is prophesied that a hero will one day pull it out and use it to end the Demon Queen's reign. Elizabeth's eyes are instantly drawn to the said sword. Gently, she rubs the sword's hilt before turning around and saying how she is looking forward to finding someone that can challenge her. She will not shrink away, but instead face him head-on. So for the first year of her reign, her entire army guards the main hall, awaiting to fight the prophecy hero. Then came the second year when Prince Malfoy left the defenses to the army, then the third year when more of the army has left, then the fourth, then the fifth. As the years went by, fewer and fewer people guarded the main hall until it became abandoned. Still, no sign of the hero was ever seen or even heard. Meanwhile, the daily lives of the people continued as normal, and soon enough 15 years of Elizabeth's reign came to pass. Under the rule of the Demon Queen Elizabeth, past practices that bred inequality and distrust among the different species were all abolished, and the kingdom started to flourish and thrive under the new peace her reign has brought. The Demon Queen turns out to be an amazing ruler, so much so that the people started to fear that the prophecy hero's coming would end their era of peace. Thus, the Anti-Hero Alliance was born, an organization that rejects the arrival of the prophecy hero. We then cut to the main hall of what was initially the castle of the human empire turned into the main capital of the demon empire. Resting her head on her hand, Elizabeth asks her subordinate for any news regarding the arrival of the prophecy hero. The first to speak is the Chancellor of the Elves, Twilia, who reports that her people utilize the tree insects to gather information on the prophecy hero, but are unable to find anything on the matter. The Chancellor of the Dwarves says something similar, saying that none of his people have found any information either. The human Chancellor, Aristotle, voices out that even if the hero were to appear, he would not be powerful enough to stand against them all. However, his fellow chancellors hurriedly explained to him that it wasn't that the Demon Queen was afraid of the hero, on the contrary, she wants him to come so that she can end the prophecy herself. Twilia grumbles that it is all Priest Barrow's fault for even mentioning the prophecy. If it weren't for him mentioning it, then this prophecy wouldn't bother them in the first place. As if he was summoned by his name, a familiar presence enters the main hall chanting the slogan of the Anti-Hero Alliance. It's Barrow, the ex-high priest of the human empire and now the president of both the Demon Queen fan club and the Anti-Hero Alliance. Annoyed by his antics, Queen Elizabeth sends a magical hand that grabs hold of Barrow and pulls him near. She then demands him to explain why the prophecy hero hasn't arrived yet. Shaking in fear, Barrow weakly explains that it might be because she's so powerful that the prophecy targeting her becomes untrue. Prince Malfoy chimes in, agreeing with Barrow's words. He believes that she should not be troubled by the prophecy and should instead focus on other manners. But before he could even finish his words, a demonic tail smacks him across the face, ceasing his yapping. Without turning back, the Demon Queen orders him to get lost. Frustrated, she throws Barrow like a dart, impaling him to the wall. She laments on how she has reached the peak of the world, waiting for the hero to come and challenge her right to rule. Yet no matter how long she waits and how much stronger she becomes, no hero is coming to challenge her. Staring at the sword stuck in the middle of the hall, she comes to a decision. Her subordinates guess her thoughts straight away and plead with her not to follow through. However, the Demon Queen has made up her mind. She puts her hand on the sword and tries to rip it out of the stone, sending waves of power, debris, and ex-high priests flying through the air. Quickly, the Demon Chancellor shields the rest from the blast. As the dust settles, we see the Demon Queen triumphantly holding the hero's sword in one hand. With the sword free, it connects itself to the hero. Using the connection, the Demon Queen quickly learns of where the hero is hiding. A smirk plasters itself on her face, and she prepares to teleport to the location. Seeing this, Malfoy desperately begs her to allow him to stay by her side. However, his cries remain unheard as she teleports away. Meanwhile, in the house that the Demon Queen saw, we see our legendary hero maintaining his crops. Not too long ago, Le Ping was just an ordinary office worker whose only hobby was to watch farming and cooking videos on his phone. He always envies the simple life shown in the short videos he watches and wishes to live just like them. And just like that, his wish came true. He was suddenly transported into this strange other world with a newbie system to help him. With the newbie system's guidance, he was taught the basic survival skills and soon enough is living the quiet, pastoral life he always wanted. After living this way for a while, his newbie system eventually tells him that he has met the conditions to leave the newbie village and venture out on his own. The problem is that Le Ping is not interested in going. So what if his mission was to murder the Demon Queen? Le Ping doesn't want to murder anybody. Despite numerous messages and annoying notifications, Le Ping continues to ignore them all and live his quiet pastoral life. Thanks to the special time barrier set in the newbie village, not only is he kept hidden, but the perception of time in the village is different too, so he can continue to do what he wants. Time flies by as he continues to spend his day forging, farming, hunting, and meditating, not at all interested in learning about swords and magic. One day, the system has had enough of its lazy master and starts cursing Le Ping so badly that it crashes and disappears. However, Le Ping is completely unbothered and continues with his monotonous yet fulfilling life. After some farming, he decides to chop some more firewood before realizing that he forgot his axe back in the forest. Before he could go back and grab it though, a dark vortex of clouds gathered on top of his home with ominous red lightning crackling in its center. Within that dark vortex materializes the Demon Queen Elizabeth. She has finally found out where the hero is. But Le Ping, however, does not notice the queen at all. Instead, he runs towards the back of his house with one thing on his mind. It's gonna rain, my laundry and dried fish are in danger. Thankfully, his laundry and dried fish remain safe. Le Ping breathes a sigh of relief. Suddenly, a small robotic robot enters the scene and starts barking noisily to catch his attention. It is Wang Kai, Le Ping's AI dog companion. Le Ping tries to hush the dog and tells him to go inside. But before he does, he hears someone call for his attention. That's when he notices that something, or rather someone, is floating in the sky. Elizabeth looks down at Le Ping and lobs the hero's sword at him. Surprised, Le Ping hurriedly drops all his fish and laundry and covers himself in self-defense. However, the expected impact never came. Instead, the sword does a calm spin around his body and sets itself gently on his palm. Feeling the new weight on his hands, Le Ping swings the sword before panic sets in as he still has no clue what's going on. Elizabeth, on the other hand, has seen enough. The man in front of him is the prophecy hero. Gathering her magic, she starts preparing the spells she prepared just to deal with the hero. Meanwhile, Le Ping is panicking. He didn't even leave the newbie village. Why is the Demon Queen here? Wan Kai, on the other hand, starts to growl and bark at the new intruder. Le Ping berates him for this, telling him to stop provoking her. But it's too late. Elizabeth's abyss magic has fully formed, ready to strike at him. Le Ping then remembers what the system said before crashing, how his meeting with the Demon Lord is inevitable, and finally understands what he means. With the Demon Queen now in front of him, Le Ping's will to live flutters away. He throws away the sword and gives up, going towards his house to await his final moments. However, in the Demon Queen's eyes, this action seems more like a challenge rather than a man accepting his faith. This enrages the proud Demon Queen as she unleashes her magic on the small house. But before the magic reaches Le Ping's home, Wang Kai stands guard in front with a determined expression on his robotic screen. Several calculations happen in its mind before pulling out an entire arsenal of weapons that fire and nullify Elizabeth's magic. As expected, Elizabeth thought as she sees Wang Kai growl at her. The hero would not go down without a proper fight. Not giving up though, she casts another powerful spell, her apocalyptic magic. With full confidence she has Wang Kai's beat, she casts the powerful spell toward the little house. However, our little robot friend isn't done yet. Calculating some more, he fires back with his own attack. At first, Elizabeth scoffs at the attack and simply dodges it. But that's when she realized that he was never aiming for there in the first place. The beam collides with her apocalyptic magic and creates a massive explosion that nullifies her spell once again. Elizabeth is shocked. She wonders what exactly the hero did inside his house. Meanwhile, Le Ping, the guy in question, can be seen lying in bed accepting his fate. With the current situation, Elizabeth decides to float down and properly face off against this surprisingly powerful robot dog. As she gets closer, Wang Kai's eyes turn red and he starts to bark at her aggressively. Elizabeth smirks as she realizes that she has underestimated her opponent. But she isn't done yet. In reality, she only used 30% of her power. Magic flowed throughout her body as she started to transform, becoming more powerful in the process. In her new form, she charges toward Wang Kai, who stands at the ready with his arsenal of weapons. Their battle rages on for an hour, and this whole time Le Ping ends up falling asleep. When he awoke, at first he thought he already died from the Demon Queen's attack. Instead, he's surprised to see that he's still inside his house and completely fine. He then approaches the front door cautiously. Although it seems quiet on the outside, there is still a chance that the Demon Queen is waiting for him outside. Mustering his courage, he eventually opens the door. On the outside, a large cloud of dust slowly settles and Le Ping sees Elizabeth holding the broken and defeated body of Wang Kai in her hands. Although badly defeated, she musters the strength to face him and taunt him with his destroyed dog. Le Ping, however, assures her that it's okay and tries to talk it out with his crazy intruder. Elizabeth agrees to talk, right after she kills him. But it seems like she used too much energy fighting Wang Kai. She barely moved a few steps before collapsing. The surprised Le Ping rushed to her side to support her. But without her power, her transformation is starting to undo, revealing her seductive body to the unprepared Le Ping. Streams of blood spray from Le Ping's nose. This situation is just too erotic. Later that night, a now-clothed Elizabeth comes to on a bed with handcuffs around her arms. She's surprised to find that the hero actually kept her alive. Was it so that he could brag to the world that he defeated her? She tries to break apart the handcuffs, but to no avail. This only worsens her misunderstanding of Le Ping as she thinks that he is hiding more of his power. Looking around the room, she spots more of his trinkets and mistakes them for powerful artifacts. Elizabeth berates herself for underestimating such an opponent. Just then, Le Ping enters the room with food in his hands. Seeing him, Elizabeth proudly declares that she would not beg for mercy if he wanted to kill her. But Le Ping doesn't have these sorts of intentions. On the contrary, he believes that the only way he can survive is if he calms the Demon Queen down and talks to her. He tells her that the handcuffs are simply a precaution because of how terrifying and formidable Elizabeth is. In a friendly manner, he offers to unlock the handcuffs so that they can talk properly. However, Elizabeth once again misunderstands his intentions. She thinks she is being let go only because the hero still has some demands. Eventually, though, Le Ping unlocks the handcuffs. Seeing that she is not in a good position right now, Elizabeth begrudgingly agrees to not attack for now and listen to the hero. With that, Le Ping turns around to let her rest. Then he breaks the fourth wall to explain to the readers the reason he didn't try to kill her in her sleep. In a world of swords and magic, it is definitely normal that the Demon Queen has some sort of resurrection skill. But killing her is not the only way to resolve his issues. He plans to use the power of friendship to calm the Demon Queen and make her his ally. That way he gets to live and have a powerful friend by his side. He laughs at his own marvelous plan, which makes Elizabeth misunderstand that he is still mocking him. Then Le Ping turns his attention to the broken body of Wang Kai. Elizabeth asks him what Wang Kai is, and Le Ping replies that he is a new companion he made recently out of boredom. Hearing this, Elizabeth sees an opportunity. With the handcuffs gone, she can use her abyss magic to quickly recover. Now is the time to strike. To let his guard down, Elizabeth apologizes for breaking his magical tool while preparing her attack. Unaware of the situation, Le Ping replies that it's okay since the memory card is still intact. As Elizabeth towers over him, ready to strike, Le Ping opens a cabinet to reveal several Wan Kai copies. He simply pops the memory card back in and Wan Kai is back, good as new. Elizabeth freezes in shock. Her plan has been foiled. Looks like she won't be able to attack him anytime soon. But before she can think of what to do next, the scent of food catches her attention. Le Ping notices and explains that he made some meat porridge and dumplings for her while she was out cold. At first, Elizabeth refuses. She has reached a level where she does not need to eat anymore. However, the delicious smell of the food made her tummy rumble. Seeing the opportunity to resolve conflicts with delicious food, Le Ping proudly explains that he made it all using vegetables and grains that he grew himself. Elizabeth hesitates before taking one of the dumplings and eating it. Le Ping watches on nervously. Even though he is confident in his cooking skills, with her status as the Demon Queen, he isn't sure if she would be satisfied with such a simple dish. She takes a moment to chew, then takes another, then one more until she cleans out the whole plate. She exclaims in ecstasy that the meat is super tender and delicious and contains a lot of magical energy as well. Elizabeth didn't even know that a delicacy like this existed in this world. All of a sudden, she experiences a surge of heat emanating from the meal. She gasps due to the dish's fiery nature and voices her displeasure about the spice, insisting on knowing the ingredients he used in the food. Seeing this, Le Ping panics. Can she not handle spicy food? He quickly explains that he added some spicy chili according to his usual taste. As expected, Elizabeth thought. Le Ping had no good intentions at all. He only kept her alive to use her in his experiments. To combat the hot spice, Le Ping hurriedly serves her some lean pork congee and century egg. Once again, Elizabeth misunderstands and thinks that he is toying with her by providing her with the poison and the antidote right after. As soon as she gets a taste though, it's as if she was transported to a whole nother world. A peaceful feeling envelops Elizabeth, and suddenly the feeling of world domination and the fight between the hero and the Demon Queen are simply disturbances that no longer bother her. As the feeling washes over her, she suddenly levels up in power. She cannot believe it. By simply eating food, she has reached the next level. This finally makes her want to get straight to the point as she asks Le Ping what exactly he wants from her. Le Ping replies that he simply just wants to research how a Demon Queen and a hero can coexist together. But in her ears, it's as if he is saying that she is the only one qualified to be the subject of his research experiments. He challenges her to become stronger so that she can finally beat him. He then offers to cook more food for her if she accepts. But her delusions run deep. What she hears instead is that he will help her become stronger to defeat him by using his so-called naturally made food. At first, this angers her. This sort of humiliation is too much. But after thinking it through, she sighs and caves in. Standing on top of the bed, she declares that she will follow his demands, but not because she is scared. Instead, she is pursuing the pinnacle of strength with the hope that one day she will be able to defeat him. Furthermore, her dignity as the Demon Queen must not be trampled, or else she will sacrifice everything to end him. Scared out of his wits, Le Ping quickly agrees to her demands, and with that, the story of how the Demon Queen and the hero started living together begins. The scene then transitions to a year later. Le Ping can be seen chopping wood with the hero's sword. As he chopped, he thought about what happened during the time that Elizabeth had been living with him. Ever since she broke into the newbie village, time has gradually started to synchronize with the outside world. Now, time synchronization is not the real issue, but without the time barrier's protection, the newbie village is now completely exposed. Thankfully, Elizabeth's pretense deters any of the strange wildlife outside the newbie village from attacking his house. Suddenly, a voice calls out to Le Ping from inside the house, complaining that it is lunchtime already. Le Ping replies that he is coming and enters the house. Inside, we are greeted by the sight of a now fat Elizabeth watching TV while eating some potato chips. She says that she is watching his recordings and nags at him to get something new from his system. Used to her nagging at this point, Le Ping replies that the system he had is long gone already. He then calls her over for lunch. With a wave of her hands, 2 tiny demon wings appear and she slowly floats over to the dinner table. Curious, she asks him what kind of poison he is feeding her that is making her feel lazier the more she eats. Le Ping sighs and explains that the potato chips she is eating are high in calories, so she should not eat too much of them or else she will become fat. As if she just noticed, she takes a look at her now bulging stomach and realizes that what Le Ping says is true. It's not a problem for the Demon Queen though. With a snap of her fingers, she uses her negative attribute conversion magic to turn all of her fat into pure magic and regain her slim figure. Le Ping simply looked in surprise. He didn't think that magic could be used like this too. Seeing his surprised expression makes Elizabeth gloat, thinking she was able to foil his plan of trying to poison her. Le Ping simply allows her to believe what she wants and tells her that lunch is ready. The mounds of delicious food take Elizabeth's attention, and she starts to wolf down all the food. Le Ping sighs after seeing how fast Elizabeth is eating and tells her to slow down. He can just make more if it's not enough after all. Le Ping's words make Elizabeth falter. In her mind, what Le Ping is implying is that she's still too weak, fatten up more. Elizabeth grits her teeth in frustration. She has already leveled up more than 10 times in the 1 year they were living together. With her strength now, she's confident in winning. But before she can challenge Le Ping to a decisive battle, he takes out the dessert he prepared for her, her favorite pudding. Instantly, any thoughts about fighting Le Ping were thrown away to the back of her mind, and she instead demands him to give her the pudding. Fortunately, it is very easy to deal with the Demon Queen, Le Ping thought. As long as he has the right food, it's easy enough to calm her down. Meanwhile, in a place not too far from Newbie Village, we see an old man running away with a blonde-haired woman in tow. Chasing them both are several mysterious figures with masks and dark cloaks. One of them leaps towards the pair, and with its dark claws, it rips a spatial tear in front of it. Suddenly, more spatial tears appear surrounding the old man and girl. Then, the mysterious figure plunges its long claws into the tear, creating a nail cage that traps the two. There's no way out. The old man stands protectively in front of the blonde woman and tells her, his daughter, to run away to the town while he holds the masked men back. Tears form in the girl's eyes as she refuses to escape without her father. But the father remains adamant. He already promised her mother that he will keep her safe no matter what. As the cloaked figures surround the two, one of them raises their hands and casts a huge ball of ghost fire at them. This forces the old man to use his strongest move to cut both the ball of ghost fire and the cloaked figure in half. Seeing his ally fall, one of the cloaked figures quickly grabs both halves of the fallen member and somehow fuses itself with both halves, revealing itself as some kind of goo-like monstrosity. Determined not to leave her father, the girl uses her magic to create a bow and arrow and shoots it at the other masked man. However, the arrows seem to have no effect. Her father warns her that she cannot handle the Dark Guild's apostles yet, and that she should just flee instead. Just then, the third Dark Apostle dashed towards the old man and hit his sword with its large arms. The old man is thrown back several feet until he hits a large boulder. Seeing her father in such a critical condition, the girl desperately calls out to her father. Although severely injured, the man still warns his daughter to get away and escape to safety. Meanwhile, the third Dark Apostle approaches the combined apostle from earlier and combines with it as well. As all three combine, they transform into a gigantic goo-like golem that's ready to crush the father and daughter pair. The girl rushes to her father's side and tries to plead with the giant monstrosity to let her father go in exchange for coming with them. Unfortunately, it seems like her being alive was not a part of the job description. But before the apostles can destroy them, an even bigger monster straight up curb stomps them to the ground, turning them all into paste. As the dust settles, the girl looks up to see that their unlikely savior turns out to be a massive mammoth. And the mammoth isn't alone. On top of the mammoth's head lies a small house where a wise immortal frog resides. The immortal frog croaks before informing his big brother that the threat has been taken care of. He then asks what should be done with the two humans that they saved. This big brother of his turns out to be living on the top of his head as well. It's Wan Kai, Le Ping's robotic companion. Wan Kai replies that they should not harm the humans. Instead, he will take them back to his master so that he can deal with them. A little while later, we see the young woman waking up in an unfamiliar bed. She looks at her surroundings, unsure of where she is right now, until she remembers that her father has been severely injured by the apostles. Without treatment, he might actually die. She quickly rushes out of bed and opens the door to the outside, worried about her father. But her worries seem unfounded as she is greeted with the sight of her father flexing his large muscles. The blonde girl continues to spectate as Le Ping compliments her father's muscles. Le Ping is amazed at just how muscled the warriors from this other world are. However, someone else does not seem as interested. As Wan Kai runs around Le Ping, minding his own business, Elizabeth kicks him out of the blue and berates him for bringing back two unknown people to their home. Wan Kai simply whimpers. Now that she has leveled up 10 times, he is no longer a match for her. Despite the commotion, Le Ping continues to gush about how sturdy the old man's muscles feel. Feeling proud of all the compliments, the old man decides to show even more of his muscles. With a mighty roar, he activates his battle soul-burning technique, which makes his muscles swell even more, ripping his shirt apart until he is in nothing but his underwear. Le Ping gasps in astonishment as the old man continues to flaunt his muscles. However, his daughter, Evil's confused voice breaks him out of his ego trip. He quietly explains that he is just trying to please his savior. Nonetheless, he is still glad to see that his daughter has woken up. Now that Evil is awake, Le Ping tries to explain the current situation to her when Elizabeth suddenly teleports in front of Evil and tells her that she should leave. And with a small display of dominance, she warns Evil that she came first. Evil shakes in fear under the pressure given out by both Elizabeth's aura and her superior assets. Thankfully, Le Ping is able to convince Elizabeth to allow the guests to come inside and talk. Inside, Le Ping offers the father and daughter pair some barley tea and apologizes for not being able to serve them something else. Evil looks at the sparkly barley tea and asks her father if this is the magical potion that instantly healed his injuries. Le Ping scratches his head in embarrassment and denies her conjecture, saying that it's too exaggerated. All he did was let her father drink some cold well water. In contrast to Le Ping's warm reception, Elizabeth still looks at the two warily. She wonders what kind of experiments Le Ping wants them to undergo and is angry that somehow she isn't enough to satisfy his urge to experiment on people. Evil's father disagrees with Le Ping, however. Although he was barely conscious at the time, he still remembers how Wan Kai brought him to the newbie village and Le Ping healing him with cold well water full of magic energy. For that he is grateful. He wouldn't have been able to see his daughter again if it weren't for his help. Hearing her father's story, Evil wonders if she is even allowed to drink something that precious. But Le Ping reassures her that she does not need to be that polite. So with Le Ping's permission, both Evil and her father took a sip from the barley tea. As the liquid enters their body, a bright light suddenly shines from their mouths and eyes as the tea transports them to an endless field of barley. Just like the Demon Queen before, a sense of bliss overwhelms their bodies as they gaze at the beautiful sky. Undisturbed by the problems of the world, in addition to this sense of bliss, they both also leveled up, with the father turning into a 4-star archmage and Evil turning into a 1-star archmage. The two stare in surprise at suddenly growing more powerful. The barley tea even awakened Evil's dormant elf blood in her, making her ears longer like a true elf's. They both sigh in satisfaction, happy that they get to feel such bliss in addition to becoming more powerful. Seeing how happy they are after one cup, Le Ping offers to pour them more tea, but Evil's father denies it with teary eyes. He cannot believe that someone as gracious as Le Ping can exist. Accepting his kindness almost feels like torment to him. Although disappointed, Le Ping agrees to not give them any more. He could offer them more drinks and snacks, but the problem is that Elizabeth has taken them all already. He apologizes to the scared duo about the lack of variety in what he can serve. Then Le Ping digresses and asks Evil's father why they were both attacked in the first place. Evil's father explains that it was due to the elf's bloodline inside Evil. Evil further adds that her mother is the elf saintess who had her when she fell in love with her father. The only issue was that intermarriages between races were forbidden by the elf race. Hearing this, Elizabeth says that it's impossible as the ban was lifted long ago under the rule of the Demon Queen. But reality seems to differ, as Evil's mother was forced to return to the Holy Land of the Elves and Evil's father hid her away. Le Ping then asked if the Elves were after them after discovering their existence. Surprisingly though, the answer is no. Both were spared after Evil's mother decided to return to the Elf tribe. Instead, the ones chasing them right now are envoys of the Dark Guild from the Demon Realm. With this revelation, Le Ping casts a suspicious look at Elizabeth, which earns him some harsh words from the Demon Queen. Still though, this situation piques Elizabeth's interest as she asks the two where the Dark Guild from the Demon Realm came from and why they are capturing elves. Evil's father replies that it is rumored that the Dark Guild is conducting human experiments to revive the Demon Queen Elizabeth. Because elves are one of the main materials, the Dark Envoys have been hunting them down ever since. With Elizabeth's own name being thrown around, Le Ping can't help but cast another suspicious gaze at Elizabeth, who this time grabs him by the collar. Realizing his mistake, he quickly apologizes and says that she's been here the whole time, so there is no way that she had anything to do with it. Curious about what the two are arguing about, Evil asks her father, but he shuts her down and tells her not to be nosy. A man knows better than to butt in a couple's argument after all. But their story intrigues Elizabeth as well as she asks them who started the rumor that the Demon Queen died. It was then revealed that it turns out she has been missing for 500 years. Lip Ping didn't even know how it was possible. Elizabeth had only been living in his house for a year. Elizabeth then asks how she is rumored to have died. According to them, the Demon Queen died after having a battle with the legendary hero that lasted for a month. In the end, the hero sacrificed himself to protect the hero continent and he died with the Demon Queen. Hearing this, Elizabeth becomes angry. She sends out her intent towards the two. Instantly, the father and daughter pair feel as if they have been transported to a field of skulls. It feels as if any wrong move and the two would die. With a demanding tone, Elizabeth declares that the rumor is false. Both Evil and her father had no choice but to quickly agree with Elizabeth's words, lest they be murdered. But before they can calm down, Lip Ping chimes in and says that she is right because he is the legendary hero while the woman they are speaking to is the Demon Queen Elizabeth. This information seems to be too much for their brains to handle. Both nearly faint from the information overload that they have just received. However, seeing their reactions made Elizabeth think that Lip Ping purposely saved them just to humiliate her. It's as if he is saying that he captured the Demon Queen, look at her and laugh. This makes her smash the table in anger and stand up to leave. She curses at Lip Ping inwardly as she leaves the room and smashes the door behind her. With the Demon Queen gone, Evil's father is finally able to exhale the air he was holding in. He then shakily asks Lip Ping what his plans to deal with them are. Lip Ping, shaking himself, replies that he isn't sure. Time must have gone haywire when Elizabeth broke through the time barrier until it finally synchronized time 500 years later. Later that night, we see the pair lying down together. Evil turns to her father and exclaims how unbelievable it is that the truth behind the Demon Queen's disappearance is that she fell in love with the legendary hero and decided to hide away from the world, just like her father and mother. Evil's father tells her not to compare them to the two. He also says that Lip Ping told him to calm down because he was probably thinking about whether he should spare them or not. Surprised, Evil asks then why did he save them if Lip Ping was just going to murder them anyway. In reply, her father said that just like he casually allowed them to break through, it is also just as easy to murder them. To get rid of or to spare is all up to either the hero or the Demon Queen's mood. Suddenly, a loud thud is heard as an ominous voice asks them what they are doing still awake at night. Lip Ping starts chuckling to himself as he pulls out a deck of cards and offers to play card games with them. Evil's father just stares at him in confusion. A little while later, both father and daughter can be seen sitting down with serious faces as Lip Ping explains the rules of the game Landlord. Unlike Lip Ping, who is playing for fun, both Evil and her father believe that this is a test whether to get rid of them or not. Looking at the deck of cards that are emanating an ominous aura, Evil asks him what the name of the game was. This stumps Lip Ping as he isn't sure that they would get what a landlord was. So instead, he names it Dragon Fight. This shocks both father and daughter and even Elizabeth, who is watching nearby with some high-level concealment magic. Lip Ping explains that the two heroes have to work together to beat the dragon, and they decide who is the hero and the dragon according to the cards they draw. Sure enough, they thought, this game is a test for them on whether they should live or not. In their vision, Lip Ping looks very evil as he warns them to think carefully while they choose their cards. Lip Ping draws his cards first and he tells the other to hurry up as well. Evil draws her cards first, but as soon as she touches the cards, their surroundings suddenly change. Evil's father, who is now revealed to be named Bess, looks around in shock. They've been transported to another realm. After picking all of her cards, Evil almost collapses. Just drawing her cards almost drains all of her magical power. Soon all of them have their cards. Lip Ping asks them if either of them wants to be the dragon, and they both said no. Looking at his cards, Lip Ping realizes that if he gets another 4 and an ace, then he would have a winning hand. He asks them once again if they wanted to be the dragon before drawing his cards. As the cards are revealed, Lip Ping frowns as none of the cards were a 4 or an ace. However, both Evil and Bess misinterpret his frown as him being dissatisfied with their performance. Lip Ping then plays an 8 before getting the floor to Bess. As soon as he tries to play a card, a surge of magic exits his body and enters the card. Playing a card is actually at the cost of his life force. Without further delay, Bess then plays a jack. Evil looks at her father worried, but Bess reassures his daughter that he is okay. Then both Evil and Lip Ping passes. Since it's Bess's turn once again, he puts down a combination known as Flying Dragon. All of a sudden, more magic is sucked out of Bess's body as the cards he plays give off the illusion of Flying Dragon attacking Lip Ping. Both looks in shock, however. When the dust settles, Le Ping can be seen completely fine. Both Evil and Le Ping then passes, which gives the turn back to Bess. He then plays a 3, which Evil passes. Le Ping then plays a 10, and they both pass. That was the start of their unfortunate end. Le Ping suddenly plays a straight, shocking the father and daughter pair. This time, it summons a huge wave that nearly washes them both away. Then Le Ping plays a trio and pair, which summons 2 gladiators on a chariot to charge at them. Bess grits his teeth. He has nothing to beat them. However, Evil steps up to challenge Le Ping's cards. Bess tells her not to play as it uses her life force as the price, but Evil refuses. She can't just hide behind her father forever. She then plays another 3 of a kind with a pair that is larger than Le Ping's cards. When the dust settles, only Evil's chariot remains standing. Bess checks on Evil if she is okay, and she replies that she is fine. However, Le Ping isn't finished yet. Both the father and daughter pair and Elizabeth, quietly spectating in the corner, suddenly has an ominous feeling. With his treasure, Le Ping summons a pair of jokers and plays it. A large crack suddenly appears in the realm that they are currently inside. From the crack comes out a level 3 demon clown king that even shocks Elizabeth with its power. As its eyes wander around, it suddenly looks straight at Elizabeth, despite her hiding herself with magic. The demon asks her what she was staring at before summoning a knife and threatening to hurt her. Elizabeth grits her teeth at the obvious provocation, but cannot do anything as the Clown King is actually equal in power to her. Despite being nourished by Le Ping for a year, Le Ping just casually summons something just as powerful as her. Bess and Evil look on in despair. Despite their best efforts, they are powerless. Suddenly, Bess starts to cough blood as he realizes that his life force is being sucked away like crazy. Concerned, Le Ping asks if he is okay, thinking that his injury hasn't healed yet, but then takes a sneaky peek at his cards. Turns out Bess had a winning hand. Le Ping then misunderstands it as Uncle Bess letting him play with him. In his naivety, he thought he was actually good, when in reality Bess just allowed him to play and Le Ping is just disturbing his rest. He then reshuffles the deck, canceling the summon for the Clown King and arranging it back into his deck. He apologizes for disturbing their rest and then sulks away back to his room. The father and daughter pair remain shaken and confused, but glad to be still alive. Meanwhile, Elizabeth once again misunderstands his intentions. In reality, this card game was a way to show off his dominance to her. The next day, the 4 can be seen standing outside Le Ping's house as he bade them goodbye. Le Ping asks them if they really did not want to stay for a few days more, as the fruits he planted were almost ripe. In response, Bess bows and says he cannot bother them anymore and that he is grateful for their kindness. He also assures them that after they go out, they will tell nobody about what they just witnessed. Evil also thanks them for giving them some barley tea. Le Ping just scratches his head in embarrassment and says that it's alright. He then approaches Bess and gives him a memento, his playing cards. After playing with him, Le Ping realizes just how bad he is at card games and decides that the cards should stay with Bess. As Le Ping willows in despair, Elizabeth catches Bess's attention. She then mouths the words "hurry up and get out of here." Seeing that, the two instantly flee for their lives without even saying goodbye, which confuses Le Ping. Just what did he do to make them react like that? Elizabeth then turns around and orders him to make food for the queen, to which Le Ping begrudgingly accepts. Meanwhile, Bess continues to run away with his daughter and Tao. Eventually, his daughter begs them to stop, so he comes to a halt. Bess sighs. First it was the test of the legendary hero, then it was the threat of the Demon Queen. He flashbacks to just last night when the Demon Queen approached them and slashed them across their necks. Surprisingly though, it did not completely get rid of them. Instead, they found themselves with new magical collars made out of runes. Then the Demon Queen commanded the two to leave tomorrow, while never revealing the Demon Lord and legendary hero's presence in Newbie Village to the world. If not, the curse marks around their necks will make them lose their heads immediately. The two had no choice but to accept the Demon Queen's request. Once the flashback is over, they both look up to realize that they were back where they first started. Even the dead apostles' corpses were still there. Bess was surprised. He didn't think that he could run that far and that fast. In reality though, Wan Kai actually gave them a helping push so that they would not be able to bother Le Ping and Elizabeth anymore. Bess looks around carefully though. He is aware that there should be many high-level demons around, so they should leave as soon as possible. Suddenly, Wan Kai's ears perk up as he notices that something is quickly approaching this location. However, he decides to ignore it this time. If he doesn't want to get beat up by Elizabeth, then it's best to keep his robotic nose out of people's business. He He then teleports himself back home just as several cloaked figures arrive in front of Bess and Evil. Alongside them, there is also one figure without a cloak that seems to be the leader of the group. Bess looks in horror. The Dark Apostle without a cloak is the Dark Guild's Great Apostle. Seeing that the gap in their levels are too big, Evil begs her father to allow her to just leave with them while he runs away. However, Bess is done with running. Comparing the level of the legendary hero and the Demon Queen, these Dark Guild Apostles are nothing. Taking out the deck of cards Le Ping gave him, he points them toward the Apostles, which instantly obliterates some weaker ones in the group. This surprises the Great Apostle. He did not expect such power to come from such a weak-looking old man. Bess admits that ever since her mother was taken back to the elf tribe, he has become timid and started escaping from their problems. However, now he realizes that it was wrong of him to do that. If they get through this difficult time, Bess promises his daughter that he will take her to the elf tribe and bring back her mother. Taking out a 4-of-a-kind out of the deck, Bess summons a mighty 4-bomb arrow god in the image of Evil's mother to fight for them. The arrow god makes a bow and arrow out of magic and releases a magical arrow aiming at all the Dark Apostles. Before they can react, 3 apostles in the arrow's path instantly die with only the Great Apostle remaining. At first, the Great Apostle sneers and confidently grabs at the arrow. However, the Great Apostle's hubris leads to its downfall, as even with both hands the arrow is able to easily pierce through and hurt it. Once all the apostles have died, the image of the arrow god dissipates and the cards return to the deck. Bess almost collapses from exhaustion afterward as Evil rushes to her father's side. Looking at the effects of the summoned cards on the environment, Bess decides right then and there to change his profession. And that's how a new profession, the Card Master, was born. A week later, as Le Ping said earlier, the fruits in his garden start to ripen and he can be seen enjoying some watermelon in his garden. He mentions that his fruit breeding method has been very successful, but without anyone to share it with, the joy of the harvest always feels like it is missing something. Le Ping then thinks back to all the amazing jobs he has seen so far in this magical world and realizes that he is a little interested in what the outside world has to offer. The only problem is that he is too weak, so he thinks that he should just forget about it. Suddenly, a cloud of dust appears as Elizabeth teleports herself next to him. Noticing his sad expression, she asks him what was wrong. Le Ping replies that he wanted to go see the outside world, but he is too weak to do so. Hearing this, Elizabeth decides to invite him out for a trip outside. Excitedly, Le Ping asks if it's true. It would be a different story if he had the protection of the Demon Queen after all. As Elizabeth finishes her drink, she tells him to change his clothes. Soon, the two of them are dressed in new and fashionable clothing that Le Ping has made. Elizabeth lets out a rare compliment, saying that both his cooking and sewing skills are really impressive. Le Ping replies that of course they are his specialties. Now that they are all dressed up, they are both ready to go out to the outside world. With a snap of her fingers, Elizabeth opens a transfer door to teleport to the nearest town. Le Ping marvels at the convenience of such a skill. But before Elizabeth walks in the transfer door, Le Ping stops her in her tracks to set some ground rules. 1. To not leave him alone. 2. To keep her emotions stable. And 3. To act more low-key with the people outside. Of course, Le Ping seemed more demanding and arrogant in Elizabeth's vision, so it pisses her off. But nonetheless, she understands and agrees to his requests. Finally, Le Ping asks if she will come back with him after seeing the changes of the outside world. After all, with the time barrier gone, he will become food for the demonic beasts if the Demon Queen isn't near. Elizabeth agrees, but for an entirely different reason. Before she officially defeats him, the outside world means nothing to her. However, the request comes with a condition. When they return, he has to go and make her a super deluxe assorted fruit pudding. Le Ping happily agrees and follows her through the transfer door, leaving Wan Cad to guard the house. After stepping through the transfer door, he is then greeted with the sight of Fantasy Town. The name of the town is Boaster Town, a neutral place where people of all races gather and live together. Le Ping's eyes shimmer as he looks around this new and strange world. He points out an equipment shop and a food stall to Elizabeth before roaming all around the place, looking at all the wondrous and foreign sights. Meanwhile, Elizabeth looks around and isn't as excited. Instead, she seems more surprised that the changes in the outside world do not seem so significant. Le Ping agrees, saying that it is not as chaotic as Uncle Bess said it would be. Elizabeth then proudly explains that it is all because of her. Before her rule, various forces were in conflict and the situation was very chaotic. Using her absolute strength, she suppressed all those forces and created a set of rules that made them all equal. So in reality, the one who saved the hero's continent was not the legendary hero, but the demon queen. Unfortunately though, her bragging seems to fall on deaf ears as Li Ping has disappeared from his original position. Instead, he can be seen looking at a stall of a young girl selling teddy bears. It's as if Li Ping doesn't even put her accomplishment in his eyes. Li Ping takes a closer look at the dolls and compliments its stitching. He then asks the little girl if she was the one who made the doll. The little girl says yes in reply and offers to sell it to Li Ping at a lower price. But before they can finish their transaction, a gruff and demanding voice asks the girl who gave her permission to set up a stall in the area. The voice belonged to a pig-headed man who kicks away the tiny stall the girl made, sending all of her dolls flying. The pig-headed man grabs the little girl and berates her as her church has not paid them any protection money yet. The little kids who were with the girl shake in fear as they witness their big sister be interrogated for money. Defiantly, the little girl retorts that they never really protected them, so she shouldn't have to pay any protection money. The pig-headed man simply snorts and informs her that since last month this territory fell under the influence of the Beast Gang. If she wants to survive here, she will have to pay them protection money every month. Still defiant, the little girl says that what he says is not true as the church belongs to the nun, and that when the nun comes back they will all be sorry they did this. The pig-headed man simply shrugs off her threat and fires back by saying that he will drive away the orphans today and destroy the old church. Seeing this injustice, Li Ping bravely steps up and tells them to stop. But when his words turn the orc's attention to him, suddenly all of his confidence vanishes. He tries to signal help from Elizabeth, but she simply ignores him. Without his main source of power, Li Ping stands helpless as the pig-headed man barks at him again to state his intentions. He looks around at the large crowd gathers and suddenly has an idea. With a loud voice, he proclaims that a pig-headed man is bullying a little girl. They should condemn him. Unfortunately for our hero though, the surrounding crowd seems to just ignore him. This makes the pig-headed man laugh. Everyone knows their beast gang here. There is no way anybody would help him. His eyes then wander to Elizabeth as he licks his lips. He judges from their clothing that they are all foreigners from the south. Seeing that the situation is not to his favor, Li Ping tries to reason with the gang by offering some local specialties from his bag that he is willing to share. But the pig-headed man does not listen. Instead, he orders his gang members to beat him up and take the woman back to the gang and lock her up. This angers Elizabeth, who believes that there is no one qualified to imprison her, despite her being a self-proclaimed prisoner of Li Ping. Her anger instantly darkens the clouds as red lightning starts to crackle, forming the shape of an evil face. The unnatural sight makes the pig-faced man shake in fear, and he drops the little girl. Seeing that her anger might end up destroying the town, Li Ping quickly tries to calm her down. Grabbing a fan from his bag, he quickly fans Elizabeth while saying that all she needs to do is scare them. Fighting with ordinary people like them is not necessary. Elizabeth coldly harumphs before deciding that fine, she will spare them because of Li Ping's words. However, her display of magic does not escape the eyes of the little girl, who is amazed with the amount of magical power that Elizabeth has. With her anger held at bay, soon the clouds dissipated as if nothing happened at all. The pig-faced man looks around in confusion and fear at the sudden change of weather. He has no idea what just went on, but now all of a sudden he has a bad feeling when facing those two. The demon pig's body trembled with fear as he asked Elizabeth and Li Ping about why they supported the church orphans. He felt confused and nervous facing them. Li Ping, realizing that negotiations might not go smoothly, suggested a deal with the demon pig. He proposed paying for protection and asked how much money the demon pig wanted. Eager for an opportunity, the demon pig nervously quoted 10 gold coins for 2 months. Elizabeth, who overheard their conversation from the sidelines, laughed and remarked that a mere 10 gold coins were making a big fuss, and it was utterly foolish. Li Ping was surprised, and he approached Elizabeth, asking if she had a lot of gold coins. Elizabeth became really happy after Li Ping praised her and claimed that she had so many treasures that she couldn't count them all. Li Ping was taken aback and asked Elizabeth to lend him some, and he would pay back later after selling the vegetables back home. However, Elizabeth wasn't pleased with Li Ping's proposal. She didn't want him to sell his precious vegetables for a mere 10 gold coins. She called Li Ping an idiot for exchanging his food for useless things, and besides, she hadn't brought any gold coins when she came to find Li Ping. Upon hearing Elizabeth's refusal, Li Ping was greatly surprised and didn't know what would happen next. Demon Pig inquired whether Li Ping and Elizabeth would pay the money or not. Li Ping, feeling nervous, scratched his head and admitted he didn't have any gold coins. He asked if he could use the local produce in his bag as compensation. Demon Pig became furious and accused Le Ping and Elizabeth of playing games. He declared that he wouldn't tolerate their nonsense anymore and ordered his men to eliminate Le Ping and capture Elizabeth. Out of nowhere, a bag full of gold coins appeared and smacked the Demon Pig in the face. The Demon Pig got super mad and demanded to know who threw it, threatening to do harm. But then, when he checked the bag, he found it was filled with shiny gold coins, surprising him. Just then, a man named Hawthorne Theres showed up. He had a half-human, half-horse body. He told the Demon Pig to stop bothering his friend and leave after getting the money. Turns out, Hawthorne was from the Sword Saint Guild, Thunder C. Buckthorn, a powerful and famous adventurer. After realizing he was dealing with a tough guy, the Demon Pig decided to give him some respect. He told his men to leave, but not before warning a little girl that she might not be so lucky next month. Once the Demon Pig left, Lei Ping helped the little girl, who thanked them for stepping in when nobody else would. Le Ping was really happy to see the girl was okay. Le Ping also thanked Hawthorne for helping and offered him some fruits with a humble smile. Hawthorne said it was no big deal, and then turned to Elizabeth. He asked if she'd be willing to partner with him on something. The little girl adjusted her glasses and asked what he meant with his words. Hawthorne replied with a suspicious smile, suggesting they move to another place to talk. If things work out, he believed it could also solve their financial problems. Elizabeth folded her hands and expressed disinterest, instructing Le Ping to ask her not to leave. The little girl's younger siblings inquired anxiously if their sister Annie was going out, concerned about her getting into trouble again. Annie reassured them, asking them to return to the church and promising to be back soon. As they were about to enter the pub, Hawthorne advised them to stay close, as they didn't know what might happen. Upon entering, everyone in the pub stared at Elizabeth and Le Ping. One man boldly approached Elizabeth, suggesting she join him instead, as the people around her looked like trouble. Le Ping and the little girl realized that if they accepted, Elizabeth would unleash her fury and likely harm everyone present. In response to the man's comment, Elizabeth's eyes turned red, and she exuded a threatening aura. Angered, she demanded the man repeat his words. The man, terrified by Elizabeth's intense presence, shook with fear along with his companions. Elizabeth turned her head to Le Ping and said it was all his fault for insisting on coming to a lousy place and wasting her time. She was really angry at Le Ping. Le Ping was nervous and told Elizabeth that they were already there. Hawthorne asked them to enter the private room where there wouldn't be any outsiders to bother them. Hawthorne opened the door and said that he was back. Then, a bunch of cute girls surrounded Hawthorne, expressing their worry and eagerness to go out and look for him next time. They pleaded with him to take them along. Hawthorne turned his head to Le Ping and mentioned that he forgot to mention he has a few wives. Seeing this, Le Ping was shocked and didn't have any words to say. He asked Hawthorne if he really had 4 wives. Hawthorne poured tea for everyone and introduced his wife to them first. First was Gasha, a shield warrior. Then he pointed out Lulu, the assassin, Glee, a mage, and lastly, Galia, an amazing elven archer. After Le Ping mentioned he had met a girl with elf bloodline a while ago, Elizabeth interrupted, urging Hawthorne to stop with the small talk as they needed to leave. One of the girls asked Hawthorne about Elizabeth, questioning her attitude. Elizabeth, visibly angered, responded that she was only acting as a queen like she was. The cat girl found it amusing hearing someone call themselves a queen and question her master if Elizabeth's brain was okay. The elf girl observed Elizabeth, and after looking at the shape of her ears, speculated that she was a lowly half-blood elf who should not be in front of her. After she heard those words, Elizabeth threatened the elf girl, saying if she insisted on bringing destruction upon herself, then she wouldn't blame her if she faced dire consequences. Le Ping knew that if he didn't calm down Elizabeth, there would be a disaster. He took the pudding from his bag and gave it to Elizabeth. When Elizabeth saw the pudding in Le Ping's hands, her anger disappeared, and she became really happy. Le Ping felt relieved and felt lucky that he was prepared. After Elizabeth calmed down, Le Ping began his conversation with Hawthorne. He explained that they were from a very distant and nameless tribe with Elizabeth as the princess of that tribe, and Le Ping as her servant. The cat girl observed that no wonder Elizabeth acted differently. She was a tribal princess who hadn't experienced the world. Another girl chimed in, mentioning that Elizabeth hailed from that primitive tribe that worshipped the demon queen in the demon realm, explaining her rude behavior and lack of civility. Le Ping signaled for silence, placing his finger on his lips. He mentioned that Elizabeth was still getting used to things and adjusting to cultural differences. He hoped that this explanation would stop any more questions about Elizabeth. Hawthorne interrupted, telling everyone to focus on the task at hand. He was interested in having Elizabeth and Le Ping join his team to explore a dungeon in search of treasure. However, Hawthorne was uncertain about the scary demonic power that came from Elizabeth earlier. He wondered if she might be part of the demon race. Le Ping then asked for more details about the treasure dungeon. He also asked Annie, the little girl, if she knew what a treasure dungeon was. Annie answered Le Ping's question and explained that treasure dungeons are magical spaces created by ancient powerful beings to hide valuable things. These dungeons are usually well hidden and very dangerous. After hearing Annie's explanation, Le Ping got an idea of what the treasure dungeons looked like. Hawthorne mentioned that he had also put in a lot of effort to learn about that treasure dungeon. However, the condition to open the barrier was that the number of people had to reach 8. If there weren't enough people, they couldn't enter the dungeon. That was why they were looking for them to make up the numbers. Little Annie started counting to see how many people there were. After finishing, she began to cry because she realized she was the 8th member of the party. With a tearful face, she asked Hawthorne if she couldn't go with them. Le Ping, feeling confused after seeing Annie cry, asked her what was wrong since treasure dungeons seemed to be precious. Elizabeth paid no attention to them as she enjoyed her pudding without a care. Little Annie turned her head and explained to her brother Le Ping that treasure dungeons are usually very difficult. She emphasized that Elizabeth was just a mere 4-star magician and expressed concern that if she goes, she'll probably die. Le Ping scratched his head and admitted he didn't know much about magic levels in that world. Hawthorne reassured Le Ping, explaining that they only needed to help him meet the number of people condition, and the battle inside would be left to them. He promised that the treasure Elizabeth would get in the end would be no less than theirs, estimating at least a few tens of thousands of gold coins. One of Hawthorne's wives chimed in, mentioning that their master had recently single-handedly repelled several dark apostles who wanted to take Jalea, demonstrating his strength. Little Annie became really happy hearing this, realizing that with tens of thousands of gold coins from the dungeon, they could easily solve the church's financial problems without any issues. Le Ping asked Elizabeth to help make up the numbers. While casually enjoying her pudding, Elizabeth, not fully attentive, agreed to assist, stating she had no problem and urged them not to interrupt the Queen's enjoyment of the delicious treat. After convincing them to seek a solution, Hawthorne instructed one of his wives to retrieve a crystal ball from his bag. Placing it on the table, Le Ping was surprised, not understanding its purpose. Hawthorne explained that it was Glee's magic measurements crystal ball. By placing their hand on it, a bright light emerged, revealing their magic level. Hawthorne demonstrated, registering a level of 8,769. Witnessing this, Le Ping and the little girl, Annie, were astonished. Le Ping inquired about the crystal ball, learning that it visualized magic levels into numbers. It was a tool for measuring magic levels, and an 8,769 reading indicated a demon spirit level. Hawthorne had disclosed that his magical prowess reached a 4-star demon spirit level, and all his wives were accomplished grand mages, rated at 4 or 5 stars. Since they were planning to collaborate, it was important for them to be familiar with each other and work together effectively. Upon hearing Hawthorne's statement, the young girl, Annie, laid her hand on the crystal ball. The ball revealed Annie's magic level, which was at 300. One of the wives of Hawthorne commented that she had a higher value than Annie when she initially changed her job. Hawthorne's wife, however, uttered harsh words that deeply upset Annie. Overwhelmed with disappointment, Annie started crying. She then apologized to Hawthorne's wife, explaining that her magic level seemed to remain stagnant despite her efforts. On the other hand, Le Ping got really excited when he saw the magic crystal since he wanted to try it too. With full excitement, Le Ping placed his hand on the magic crystal. However, there was no immediate reaction from the crystal ball. Suddenly, a number appeared on the crystal ball, indicating that Le Ping's magic level was 0. Hawthorne became really confused. He had never seen something like that before. He said that even a pure martial arts user wouldn't have a magic level of 0. Le Ping placed his hand on his forehead and realized that someone like him, who had been farming all his life, wouldn't have magic. He sat down on his chair and whispered that he was doomed to have no magic in this life because he never learned more about magic and swordsmanship. The cat girl was really disappointed after seeing Le Ping's magic level and asked what he could do. After hearing these harsh words, Le Ping responded that he was good at something: farming. He mentioned that he recently harvested some fruit they could try. The horsemen's wives expressed their disappointment, making fun of Le Ping. One of the girls commented that he was a typical bumpkin from a remote area and suggested keeping the fruit for himself. The cat girl wondered if Le Ping was really just an ordinary servant because he didn't look like one. Hawthorne calmed everyone down and suggested that Princess Elizabeth should also try. However, Elizabeth wasn't listening to Hawthorne's words. Le Ping convinced Elizabeth to cooperate with them. Upon hearing this, Elizabeth got annoyed and hated the fact to accompany them to play with ignorant mortals. She placed her hand on the crystal ball, and suddenly a bright light came out of the crystal ball, becoming so intense that no one could see what was happening. Le Ping was really scared. He thought if Elizabeth's identity as the Demon Queen got exposed, it would definitely cause a big uproar. He asked Elizabeth to control her magic level so they wouldn't reveal her true identity. Elizabeth replied that she knew what she was doing and wouldn't reveal her true power. She thought it was rare to come out, so she'd play along with Le Ping. She controlled her power, surprising everyone. After some time, the crystal ball started showing Elizabeth's magic level. Her level was 8,000. Little girl Annie announced to everyone that big sis Elizabeth's level was just like Horse Brothers, a demon spirit level of strength. Hawthorne's wives were really surprised. They didn't understand how this girl's level was similar to their husbands. One of the girls couldn't believe that Elizabeth was a 4-star demon. Le Ping felt relieved seeing that Elizabeth had control over her magic power level. On the other hand, the horseman said that Elizabeth was truly amazing and worthy of being the princess of the kingdom. With her joining, their chances of getting the treasure would greatly increase. Little girl Annie asked Hawthorne how they could go to that treasure dungeon. Le Ping also thought this was his second time going out, and he encountered such a good thing. He could learn from them. Hawthorne asked one of his wives to tell them how they would go to the treasure dungeon. His wife said okay and retrieved a scroll from her bag. She threw the scroll in the air and it started glowing. This was a teleportation scroll. With this, they could teleport directly to the treasure dungeon. After using the teleportation scroll, they teleported into the dungeon. Le Ping felt really surprised, saying he was dizzy from the teleportation. Little girl Annie got scared after seeing an unknown aura from the dungeon. But Elizabeth didn't care about the dungeon. She had already faced more dangerous things than this dungeon. Hawthorne called everyone and suggested they not delay, urging entrance into the treasure dungeon. Observing this, Elizabeth expressed her reluctance, informing Le Ping that she preferred not to participate and advised him to head home. Startled by Elizabeth's decision, Hawthorne and his wives exchanged surprised glances. A girl inquired about Elizabeth's sudden change of heart, questioning if she was playing games with them by altering her decision at the 11th hour. 2 others chimed in, asking if Elizabeth was aware of the considerable amount of crystals and magic power required to craft the teleportation scroll. They cautioned that if she chose not to enter, the group should abandon any thoughts of leaving as well. After hearing this, Elizabeth got angry and asked them if they had the power. Why didn't they try to stop her? Le Ping came forward and asked everyone not to be impulsive and listen to him for a moment. Le Ping had an idea, and in the next moment, he started begging Elizabeth, saying that since she came here, she should just take an in. Annie asked Elizabeth if she also noticed inside the cave there was a magic power that was very similar to Elizabeth. After hearing Annie's words, Le Ping thought, a magic power that is very similar to Elizabeth's? What did she mean? He didn't get what Annie was actually saying. The horseman came forward, pushed Le Ping, and asked Elizabeth to trust him. No matter what danger she encountered inside, he would protect her. He insisted that she go in with him, addressing her as Princess Elizabeth. Elizabeth didn't care about him. She instructed Le Ping to follow her, mentioning that she would play with him since he rarely came out. Le Ping started following Elizabeth without saying a word. Observing this, Hawthorne gritted his teeth in frustration. They began entering the dungeon one by one. Annie was genuinely surprised after entering the dungeon for the first time. Once inside, Le Ping noticed the dungeon barrier closing. He asked if they couldn't go back the way they came. Elizabeth explained that in this special magic space, it was impossible to leave by transfer magic unless they were stronger than the person who set up the barrier. Unless they found the target location and met the requirements of the barrier setter, none of them could leave. After some time, they reached the main entrance of the dungeon. One of the girls said that as long as they had their master with them, they would definitely get that thing. Another girl whispered, questioning what they would do if they found out about that thing. Annie overheard their conversation and asked Sister Gilia what they meant by that thing. Girl Gilia ignored Annie's question and mentioned that it was gold coins and treasure. She reassured Annie that they wouldn't be left out. On the other hand, Le Ping asked about the forks in front of them and wondered where they should go. With Elizabeth backing them up, Le Ping thought it was no problem. The adventure officially began. The Catril asked Hawthorne which way they should go and if they needed to split up. Hawthorne said they didn't have to split up for the time being and asked one of the girls to use that move. The pink-haired girl agreed and used her magic wand to find the right route to the treasure. She told Elizabeth that she'd find the shortest route to the treasure in no time. Elizabeth smiled and remarked that she was just ignorant and didn't know how big the world was. After some time, the pink-haired girl learned that there were many treasure boxes, but she also discovered that there were monsters in this dungeon and all the monsters were at the boss level. After finding that much, her mana drained out and she couldn't check more. After a while, Hawthorne questioned the pink-haired girl about the maze's situation and if she explored it thoroughly. The pink-haired girl replied that the maze seemed endless. She extended her magic to the limit but found no trace of the edge. Hearing this, two other girls were surprised, exclaiming that Glee's magic reach was only 3 kilometers. They suggested using spirit divination, but it had a low accuracy rate of 34%. Despite the uncertainty, they considered using the clone technique in groups for support. Leping turned to Elizabeth and asked if she knew the right way. Elizabeth smiled, stating confidently that the maze was just an illusion. She believed the ignorant youngsters would never escape. Leping asked why she wouldn't help, offering to repay the favor quickly. Elizabeth changed her mind, expressing her desire to watch them perish together. As time passed, they encountered many tunnels, with one possibly leading to the treasure. Annie, a little girl, suggested taking the third cave to reach the destination. Leping, excited, asked how she knew. Annie admitted it was a guess, sensing a special magic coming from that direction. The pink-haired girl dismissed Annie's words, questioning why she didn't feel the mentioned magic and insulting her, claiming a mere 4-star maid shouldn't make random comments. After hearing the harsh words from the pink-haired girl, Annie became scared and apologized. The pink-haired girl mentioned that they hadn't explored the bottom yet, and based on no information, the last passage typically had fewer monsters. She suggested they go that way, claiming she could safely scout them to the treasure. Upon hearing this, Hawthorne asked the cat girl for her opinion. She still believed it was better to work in small teams for faster exploration. Another girl suggested following the pink-haired girl, even if they made a mistake, as they could always go back together. The pink-haired girl asked Hawthorne to trust her in leading them safely to the treasure. Hawthorne agreed to act together in the last cave. Annie, however, protested loudly, saying they could go anywhere else but not the last cave. She summoned a cute rabbit doll and sent it to the last tunnel, only for a huge monster to emerge and devour the doll, leaving only its head. Leping, frightened by the scene, asked what the creature was. Elizabeth explained it was a parasitic beast often found in the bodies of huge monsters. The Catril asked if the explored area was the corpse in its stomach. The pink-haired girl got angry at Annie for exposing her. After some time, Elizabeth suggested letting them struggle on their own and asked Leping to go. Leping, scratching his head, asked if it would be better for Elizabeth to lead the way, considering they didn't know what dangers awaited them. Elizabeth and Leping headed towards the tunnel. Annie asked if they were going in the right direction and requested them to wait for her. The Catril asked Hawthorne if she should use a clone to follow them and gather information. Hawthorne advised against it, thinking Elizabeth wouldn't make such a calm choice without confidence, hinting at her mysterious background. Hawthorne decided to follow them with his wise. On the other side, deep in the dungeon, a huge glowing monster's eye appeared. Shortly after, monsters began to attack them. They fought bravely, and Hawthorne asked his wife if they had solved the problem. The warrior girl reassured them, saying they had eliminated the remaining monsters, but new ones kept coming in waves on the road. On the other side, Leping and little Annie hid behind Elizabeth. Leping asked if it was safe, and if any monsters remained. Elizabeth turned her head to Leping, visibly angry, and scolded him for being a terrible actor. The pink-haired girl blamed Annie for leading them to a road full of monsters, insisting they should have followed her advice to find the treasure. Elizabeth defended Annie, explaining that concentrated magic attracts monsters, something the pink-haired girl, as a mage, should know. Frustrated, the pink-haired girl accused Elizabeth of being a powerful demon spirit who cared little about others. Elizabeth argued it was their problem and part of their agreement to handle the monsters. Hawthorne stepped forward, asking the pink-haired girl to calm down, reminding her of their promise to protect them. The pink-haired girl grew angrier, thinking Elizabeth not only embarrassed her, but also dared to seduce the master. The elf girl suggested they rest to recover energy after the prolonged monster fights. Elizabeth disagreed, claiming she had no extra time to waste on them. The cat girl, frustrated, questioned why Elizabeth didn't go on alone if she was so capable. The elf girl agreed, stating they blocked monsters for her. Hawthorne urged Elizabeth to listen and proposed a break for everyone to recover. He offered an elf potion to help with their stamina. Le Ping, curious about the potion, asked Elizabeth if he could try it, making a cute face and suggesting it might inspire his cooking. Elizabeth, thinking Le Ping had already enjoyed many good things, gave him permission and they set up camp to rest. The pink-haired girl praised Galia's elf potion, saying it really worked. The warrior girl said she had finally recovered, though she wasn't sure how long it would take to find the treasure. The elf girl took a potion from her storage ring and offered it to Elizabeth, calling it her special elf potion that enhances various states. Elizabeth, being powerful, declined, but Hawthorne intervened, telling the elf girl not to be rude and instructing her to give a potion to everyone. Unhappily, she tossed a potion to Elizabeth, who caught it but wasn't pleased. Elizabeth gave the potion to Le Ping, who, after tasting it, found the grassy flavor too strong and decided not to drink it. He offered it to Annie, who thanked him but explained that she hadn't used much magic power so she didn't need it. After hearing Le Ping's criticism of his potion, the elf girl expressed displeasure, deeming it a waste on someone with no magic power. Elizabeth, not pleased with the elf girl's words, dumped the potion into the fire, further infuriating her. She questioned Elizabeth about dumping her elf potion, to which Elizabeth coldly responded that she agreed with the elf girl's thoughts, showing no regard for the potions. Le Ping intervened, calming everyone down and stating that he had something for everyone that shouldn't be crushed. He retrieved bananas from his bag, expressing his desire to share them. Le Ping gave a banana to Hawthorne and distributed bananas to everyone. Finally, he gave an apple to Annie, mentioning that the bananas had all been divided and asking if she could eat an apple. Annie got emotional after receiving the apple. She asked if he was really giving it to her, surprising Le Ping, who thought it was just an apple and saw no need for tears. Annie asked Le Ping if she could take the apple back to her brother and sister. The orphans in the orphanage hadn't eaten fresh fruit for a long time. After hearing Annie's story, Le Ping understood why she was crying. He told her that of course she could take it back, and he'd pick some more for her when he got home to send over. Le Ping promised Annie that everyone in the orphanage could eat fresh fruit. The pink-haired girl threw the banana that Le Ping gave her, saying she didn't care about this rotten fruit and didn't need it. The elf girl also agreed, stating that it couldn't be compared with her elf potion. Hawthorne suggested they fill their stomachs for now, and when they got the treasure, he'd treat them to something good. They started eating bananas, and after the first bite, they felt something strange. Their bodies started glowing, and in the next moment, they found themselves in the forest. They asked what place it was, and suddenly, 3 grasshoppers appeared and started singing. They asked the group to dance with them, and all 3 of them started dancing. Le Ping was confused, not knowing what they were doing. This was the effect of the banana. The pink-haired girl and elf girl, who didn't eat the banana, were really surprised. The elf girl asked Hawthorne what he was doing. After eating bananas, Hawthorne and his wives leveled up. They didn't understand what was happening. Their magic levels kept rising. When Le Ping saw their dance performance, he was surprised. He clapped and called it a bonfire performance, showing he genuinely liked it. Le Ping also said that the cultural customs of the other world were interesting, making it worth coming out to see centaur dancing. Elizabeth, watching Le Ping's happiness, thought he knew about potential danger ahead and had enhanced them in advance to continue the game. On the other hand, the elf girl who didn't eat the banana was puzzled. She asked what was going on, wondering how their magic levels suddenly shot up so much. When Annie saw their surprise, she explained that it was because they ate the bananas. However, the pink-haired girl didn't believe Annie. She dismissed it as nonsense, questioning if those broken bananas were soaked in holy water to boost stats. The warrior girl told the pink-haired girl, Gilia, that it was the banana that made them break through and advance. She mentioned ascending to a 2-star demon spirit just a few seconds after eating the banana. The Catril agreed, stating that just after they ate the banana, they entered a new realm. She wondered if the banana was enchanted by a magician of the demon's sovereign level. Hawthorne added that after eating, he broke through 3 stages in a row, directly ascending to a 3-star great demon spirit. Finding it unbelievable, he asked Le Ping about the origin of the bananas he gave them. On the other side, Le Ping was really confused. He didn't understand Hawthorne's words. For Le Ping, these bananas were just ordinary. Getting this reaction from Le Ping, Hawthorne asked what was wrong. Le Ping said nothing, mentioning that being suddenly asked by him, he didn't know how to answer because they were just ordinary bananas. Hawthorne was not pleased with Le Ping's words, thinking it should be a hybrid crop that Le Ping grew with some magic item. Le Ping clarified that he grew these bananas with natural and organic farming, a production method he thought of in this world full of magic. Hearing about the magical banana from their master, the pink-haired girl and the elf girl decided to eat it to increase their magic levels. After taking a bite, the banana rotted and the pink-haired girl threw it away, saying it was clearly bad. After seeing this, little Annie said it was synchronicity. Elizabeth praised her for knowing what synchronicity meant. Annie mentioned that she learned it from the magic books. Hawthorne asked Annie what synchronicity meant. Annie explained that the nuns' magic books mentioned special treasures usually had to be used under special conditions to exert their effects. She guessed that Le Ping's banana had to be eaten by 3 or more people at the same time to produce an effect. Upon hearing this, the pink-haired girl became angry at Annie. She questioned why Annie pretended to know things she didn't. The pink-haired girl pointed out that Elizabeth ate the banana herself, and hers didn't rot. Annie apologized, admitting she didn't know either. She suggested that unless the user's strength completely surpassed the treasure, it was nothing more than an ordinary thing to them. On the other side, Elizabeth ate her banana without any problems. The elf girl warned Annie not to look at her with her eyes. Annie apologized, and the elf girl suggested that maybe it was because of Hawthorne's accumulated elf potion over time that produced the effect. Hawthorne asked Le Ping if he could share more fruits from his backpack to test if they were real. The elf girl questioned if Hawthorne actually believed their nonsense about the magical banana. Le Ping happily said that sharing is the greatest joy and started getting more fruits from his bag. Meanwhile, Elizabeth had already finished eating her banana. She snatched Le Ping's backpack and declared that those were what she was going to eat later. She refused to give her precious fruits to anyone else and told Le Ping to leave when they've rested enough because the journey was almost over. Le Ping apologized to Hawthorne and said he would treat him well when he had the chance. Hawthorne understood the situation and told Le Ping to go ahead as he would catch up with his wives. After packing up, Le Ping was grateful and suggested they set off together. Elizabeth interrupted, urging him to hurry up, or she would leave without him. Le Ping agreed and asked Hawthorne to gather up ahead and meet later. Seeing this, Hawthorne's wives were not happy. The catgirl suggested they snatch the backpack away, as they might be hiding something even better. Hawthorne calmed down his wives and said there was no rush since it wasn't the right time yet. He also mentioned that ordinary people wouldn't casually carry such precious treasures. The assumed Elizabeth was definitely not a simple princess from a remote tribe. Recently, one of the 4 major powers, the Kingdom of Aristotle, was offering a high reward for information on the missing princess. If he was not mistaken, that princess was right in front of him now. If he could turn the princess into his woman during this opportunity, he could climb the ranks of the Kingdom of Aristotle's power. By then, he would gain more than just these magical fruits. Before him, Hawthorne started laughing loudly and declared he would conquer Elizabeth and make her one of his harem girls. Seeing Hawthorne like this, his 4 wives started praising him, saying a charming pheromone was emanating from the master. They blamed themselves, stating that they hadn't been able to satisfy their master yet. In the maze's depths, many monsters lurked in the shadows. One of them was the powerful shadow wolf leader. Suddenly, it got really scared and hastily ran away. Shortly after, 3 individuals entered the cave: Elizabeth, Le Ping, and the little girl Annie. Le Ping asked Elizabeth about the mysterious labyrinth, questioning if there was indeed an exit. Elizabeth replied that she had already told him the labyrinth was just an illusion. And they were almost there. They proceeded deeper into the cave, but something unexpected happened. From the cave ceiling, a strange thing emerged. Annie got frightened by the noises and alerted Le Ping. Le Ping asked her to explain, but before they could understand, something swiftly approached them, and smoke enveloped everyone. When the smoke cleared, Hawthorne arrived with his wives. He apologized for the delay and sought forgiveness from Elizabeth. Hawthorne offered to serve Elizabeth for the remainder of the journey, even suggesting she could sit on his back. However, Elizabeth, being a strong, independent woman, told him to get lost, stating he wasn't qualified to be her mount. The elf girl, unhappy with Elizabeth's response, called her arrogant and asked her not to be shameless when their master was showing her respect. Suddenly, the elf girl's head exploded, leaving everyone in shock and confusion, unsure of what just happened. Stones fell from above as Le Ping turned his head towards the ceiling. He saw insect monsters called dragon fleas, who had devoured the head of an elf girl. One of them jumped down, opening its big mouth full of sharp teeth to attack Elizabeth. However, it didn't realize who Elizabeth was. Elizabeth's eyes glowed red, and in an instant the monster exploded. Little Annie, a girl in the group, got really scared, thinking they were in serious trouble and everyone would die. Le Ping was scared too and ran to Elizabeth, catching her leg. He urgently asked Elizabeth what they should do next. Upon seeing Li Ping's actions, Elizabeth thought that Le Ping wanted to test human nature. She believed he intended to let the selfish and arrogant ones destroy themselves first, viewing it as his first step in testing them all. The dragon flea monsters started attacking with high speed. The warrior girl grabbed a carriage and transformed it into a shield. The pink-haired girl began casting spells, creating a shield barrier and getting Hawthorne and the warrior girl inside. Seeing this, Le Ping asked what about them. Hawthorne smiled and instructed Le Ping to find a way by themselves, thinking it was a good opportunity to test Elizabeth's strength. The warrior girl arrogantly declared that cooperation was over, and the pink-haired girl suggested Le Ping stay outside as bait. Suddenly, the barrier the pink-haired girl created was destroyed, and her head went flying. Witnessing this, the warrior girl became really scared. With the pink-haired girl eliminated, the magic barrier disappeared, and monsters started attacking Hawthorne and his two remaining wives. Meanwhile, Le Ping remained hidden behind Elizabeth. Hawthorne used his Thunderbolt Flash to defeat monsters in a single strike. The warrior girl relied on her shield strike to take them down. The catgirl, skilled in assassination, used her short blade technique. However, no matter how they fought, the monsters seemed endless. If this continued, they would become exhausted. During a moment of rest, a monster suddenly attacked the catgirl from above. Luckily, Hawthorne saved her using his clapping thunderback step. Despite their efforts, the monsters kept coming. Elizabeth asked Le Ping if, after seeing their true colors, he still wanted to continue the adventure game with them. Le Ping decided it was time to part ways. He felt that the outside world was too unpredictable, and maybe farming in the village suited him better. Elizabeth smiled, realizing that Le Ping first tested them, then determined if they were worth saving. This was his third step. She asked Le Ping to get ready to leave. Hearing this, Le Ping asked if they could go out. Annie grabbed Le Ping's hand and pulled him, saying that the way was just ahead. Suddenly, a monster approached from behind and attacked little Annie. She got scared, and her normal eyes turned red. Her bunny doll transformed into a giant bunny and defeated the monster with one attack. Afterward, it changed back to a normal bunny, and Annie caught it, unsure of what just happened. Before Annie could think, Le Ping asked her to join them. Elizabeth stopped, knocked in the air, and created an invisible barrier. After casting a magic spell, the barrier disappeared, revealing a giant door. Le Ping was surprised to see the hidden exit. The giant door opened, and Elizabeth entered, urging Le Ping and Annie to catch up. Ignoring Hawthorne's stares, Le Ping asked Annie to follow Elizabeth. Both went through the door, leaving Hawthorne and his wives fighting monsters. Hawthorne, furious, told his wives to get on his back, running towards the giant door with full speed. They reached it just in time, entering before it closed. Inside, they were surprised to find a room filled with gold and jewelry. They were all really surprised to find themselves standing on a flying island filled with treasure. Le Ping got really excited when he saw all the gold. Le Ping exclaimed that there was so much gold, and now they were rich. Little girl Annie was also there, wondering if they could really take some of it. Suddenly, a horseman came and pushed Le Ping aside. The horseman's wife pushed Annie too. Hawthorne stood in front, smiling after seeing the treasure. Hawthorne had been working hard to find it, and now he knew it was real. The treasure he was talking about was the Demon King's nectar. Le Ping interrupted them, asserting that now that they had found the treasure, they had to share it without expecting gratitude, urging them not to be unreasonable. However, Hawthorne wasn't happy. He looked back at Le Ping and expressed his dissatisfaction, mentioning that he hadn't expected them all to be so helpful in filling the numbers. He smiled like a demon and declared that, as a thank you gesture, he would allow them to die quickly. Before Hawthorne could take any action, gold coins started falling, and a big yellow eye opened from the pile of coins. The entire island shook, and a big dragon appeared in front of everyone. The golden dragon, the owner of all the treasure, was revealed. Witnessing the dragon, Le Ping was genuinely surprised. He called Elizabeth and asked her to look at it. This marked the first time Le Ping had seen a real dragon, but Elizabeth didn't seem to care. On the other side, Annie's entire body shook with fear. She mentioned that there was something even more terrifying hidden. Suddenly, her eyes turned black and she inquired, "Master, what do we do now?" Upon spotting little Annie in such a state, Elizabeth grew suspicious. However, before she could voice her concerns, the golden dragon let out a loud roar at Hawthorne and his wives. The warrior girl turned to Hawthorne and the cat girl, seeking guidance on dealing with the powerful dragon. Ignoring their inquiries, Hawthorne urged them to buy him some time while he charged up to deliver a single lethal strike. Agreeing to Hawthorne's plan, the cat girl and warrior girl prepared to attack the dragon. Yet the dragon struck first, forcing all three to step back and regroup. Determined to find a strategy, the warrior girl asked the cat girl to distract the dragon while she attacked. Using her clone technique, the cat girl created 100 clones to assail the dragon. Meanwhile, Hawthorne, confident that the giant dragon was the sole threat, decided to unleash his full magical power. He smiled as he gathered energy for his most potent move, the Swift Thunder Flash. As his sword began to glow, he concentrated all his energy into the weapon. On the other side, the cat girl's continuous attacks with her assassination technique proved ineffective. Her skills failed to make a dent in the dragon, leaving her puzzled. Sensing the challenge, the powered-up warrior girl stepped in, requesting the cat girl to let her handle the situation. Employing her shield transformation blaster skill, she threw a massive shield equipped with rockets directly at the golden dragon, ensuring a direct hit. The warrior girl was happy, thinking her new move had worked after becoming a 2-star demon spirit. However, her joy shattered when she saw the dragon completely unharmed by the massive shield hit. The dragon, now angry, attacked the warrior girl with its giant foot. Without her shield, she couldn't protect herself and got smashed, leaving only her broken body and some blood on the ground. Witnessing this horrifying scene, the cat girl became really mad. She activated her Thousanders clone technique, and in the next moment, numerous cat girls emerged, attacking the dragon. Despite the cat girl's belief that she could disturb the dragon, it countered with a skill called Golden Hurricane. Gold coins surrounding the dragon formed a tornado, and he used them to throw and subdue the cat girls one by one. The cat girl's clones started to die. As the dragon got faster, Le Ping and Elizabeth also faced attacks from the gold coins. Le Ping just stood there without doing anything, and the gold coins flew past him. Elizabeth gazed at Le Ping and commented on his apparent calmness. Little did she know, Le Ping was actually terrified as he had just narrowly escaped death from the dragon's recent attack. The relentless dragon continued its assault. Annie, a young girl with unusual powers, activated her dollhouse release summon technique. A massive bear emerged, shielding them from the dragon's onslaught. As Hawthorne cast his skills, gold coins flew towards him. The cat girl, loyal to her master, defended him with her sword. However, a stray gold coin struck her head, ending her protection. Now only Hawthorne remained. Confident in his abilities, he completed his skill casting and unleashed his 300% lightning flash technique at the dragon's neck. To his dismay, the attack had no effect. The dragon stood unharmed, and Hawthorne's sword shattered into pieces. Shocked and confused, he fretted over his broken sword, and the dragon struck him with its tail, sending him flying to the other side of the island, crashing into Treasure Mountain. Hawthorne was unaware that the dragon they were facing was a formidable 4-star level demon sect monster. After dealing with that horseman, the dragon stood in front of Le Ping's group. Upon witnessing Hawthorne's fight with the dragon, Le Ping wondered if the centaur had died from its tail slap. It seemed like he had to use his trump card, so he called Elizabeth. When Elizabeth asked what he was going to do next, Le Ping, with a serious expression, instructed her to take action. Surprised, Elizabeth thought Le Ping had found out something, but she was mistaken. Le Ping was scared and urged her to take action, warning that they might die. Responding with an annoyed expression, Elizabeth instructed Le Ping not to order her in front of outsiders. She felt angry, suspecting that Le Ping intended to use little girl Annie to threaten her. As they conversed, little girl Annie suddenly remarked that the real terror hadn't come yet, and they might never get out of there. Hearing this, Elizabeth sensed that something was off. Approaching little girl Annie, Elizabeth examined her and immediately realized that Annie had the bloodline of Jimji. She asked Annie to show her what her magic was all about. Elizabeth had placed her hand on Annie's head, and a purple light surrounded her body. After that, Annie began recalling her past, where she used to play and eat with her younger siblings. One day, black-robed monsters attacked them, attempting to harm Annie and her siblings. In a sudden awakening of her bloodline power, Annie unintentionally unleashed a force that not only defeated the monsters but tragically took the lives of her younger siblings. The trauma from that day haunted Annie, leading her to forcefully suppress her magic and alter her memories. Upon discovering the truth, Elizabeth released her magic, letting go of Annie. As Annie fell to the ground, Elizabeth criticized herself, calling her stupid. Little Annie, overwhelmed with guilt, apologized to her deceased brother and sister, admitting she was the one who caused their deaths. Unmoved, Elizabeth declared Annie a disgrace to the Jimji clan's bloodline. Despite the harsh words, Elizabeth challenged Annie to break free from the prison of regret and stand up to fight. In response, Annie agreed, determined to protect her brother, Le Ping. As she stood up, she began to float in the sky, surprising Le Ping. Annie then utilized her puppet magic summon skill, bringing forth numerous large and powerful puppets. The sight angered the golden dragon, which attacked Annie, only to be blocked by her panda puppet's fluffy body. Panda grabbed the dragon's leg, making it unable to move. On the other side, the rabbit doll began attacking the dragon repeatedly in the same spot. These constant strikes caused the golden dragon's tough body to start breaking, and it screamed in pain. Le Ping asked Elizabeth what she did to Annie earlier and how Annie changed so much. Elizabeth explained that she didn't do much, just helped Annie accept reality. The golden dragon attacked the rabbit again and pushed it to the ground. Annie struggled with the dragon and commanded her rabbit puppet to grab the dragon's other leg. When the dragon attacked the rabbit, it grabbed its hand. Both the panda and rabbit were stopping the dragon from moving, and little Annie commanded her snake puppet to attack the dragon. The snake puppet grabbed the dragon's whole body and began attacking. The dragon tried to counter with its golden hurricane, but little Annie's eagle puppet used wind magic to halt the dragon's attack. All the coins that were meant to cause harm started flying away due to the wind magic. Le Ping was genuinely surprised after witnessing Annie's power and praised her as truly amazing. He remembered what Elizabeth had said before and asked her what she meant by Annie having the Jimji bloodline. Before he could finish his words, someone grabbed Le Ping's bag and snatched it with lightning speed. Due to that, Le Ping fell to the ground. The one who attacked him was Hawthorne, who was still alive. He grabbed Le Ping's bag, which contained magical fruits. Upon seeing Hawthorne alive, Elizabeth remarked that the scum hadn't died yet. On the other side, Le Ping, who had been robbed of his bag, asked Hawthorne to give it back. However, Hawthorne paid no attention to them. He opened the bag and took out Le Ping's fruits. While laughing like a creep, he claimed Le Ping's fruits were now his. He started eating Le Ping's magical fruits one by one without stopping. Le Ping, confused, asked him what he was doing, saying it was already late and he shouldn't be eating. However, after consuming Le Ping's magical fruits, something started changing in Hawthorne's body. Purple smoke emerged, and his eyes began to shine. He exclaimed that his true power was coming. Suddenly, his body started to grow, and all the armor he was wearing fell off one by one. Hawthorne transformed into an ugly monster, and his level became unknown. He declared that the power pouring out had awakened unprecedented strength in his body, laughing like a villain. Hawthorne talked about not being scared of the elders from the Sword Saint Guild hearing his trash talk. Golden Dragon got angry and attacked him with its breath. Quickly, Hawthorne dodged the attack and appeared in front of the dragon. He told the dragon to stop bothering him, called it a lizard, and kicked it in the face. The dragon flew away and fell with just one blow. After killing it, Hawthorne went for the treasure in the middle. He found a coffin filled with some liquid and said that adding it would make him incredibly strong. Drinking it, he immediately felt its effects. His eyes turned red and his body started changing. Horns emerged from his head and wings popped out from his back. He evolved into an evil form, claiming it was the Demon King's sweet wine. Le Ping and others noticed Hawthorne getting strange. Le Ping asked Elizabeth to do something, but little Annie, standing in front, bravely assured Le Ping she wouldn't let Hawthorne get close. She started casting her puppet magic, but before she could finish, Hawthorne closed the gap and stabbed her with his arm, ending her life. Hawthorne declared that he would eliminate anyone he saw as a threat. Le Ping was shocked when he saw Annie in that state, his eyes filled with tears. Hawthorne threw Annie aside and approached Le Ping, declaring that it was now his turn. However, Le Ping rushed to Annie, grabbed her hand, and urged her to hang in there because Elizabeth would come to her rescue. Hawthorne then confronted Elizabeth, stating that he knew she was hiding her strength, but it didn't matter. He presented her with two choices: either willingly become his woman, return to her kingdom, and help him inherit everything, or be slowly manipulated by him until she became useless, serving as a bargaining chip for his desires. With a disgusting laugh, he reveled in his plans. This angered Le Ping, who implored Elizabeth to get rid of Hawthorne immediately. Hawthorne, infuriated by Le Ping's words, dismissed him as a trash servant. He leaped towards Le Ping, attacking with his Thunder Road. However, a massive explosion occurred upon impact, sending Hawthorne flying and breaking all his legs. Smoke enveloped everyone, and as it cleared, Le Ping declared that he wouldn't pretend anymore. Hawthorne pulled back, feeling thoroughly confused by what had just transpired. It seemed like the damage caused by his attack had instantly bounced back at him. Looking at Elizabeth in front of him, he asked if she was responsible. However, Elizabeth ignored him, completely focused on Le Ping. She knew that even her powerful demon magic couldn't harm the clothes Le Ping had crafted himself. Thinking that Le Ping intentionally manipulated him into attacking, Elizabeth believed he was paving the way for his own downfall. Le Ping's clothes radiated a beautiful blue light as he addressed Hawthorne, mentioning that everyone called him the hero. In a playful manner, Le Ping teased about showing his true power, but quickly returned to reality, feeling nervous. Le Ping believed that as long as he served Elizabeth and provided her with delicious food, she would protect him. He was confident that Elizabeth wouldn't let him die, regardless of the danger. In the face of any threat, anyone attempting to harm him would be akin to trying to destroy the queen's rice bowl in the eyes of the demon queen. On the other hand, Hawthorne found Elizabeth's behavior truly perplexing. With a devilish laugh, he remarked on her pride and forgetfulness. Claiming that he had only used less than half of his strength earlier, he looked at Elizabeth with anger and said that despite his great prowess, she had rejected him. Shouting at her to die for him, he leaped into the air, declaring that the next attack would be a full blow, challenging her to rebound it. Before he could reach Elizabeth, however, someone else intervened. A forceful attack crushed Hawthorne's face, causing him to fall to the ground with a solid impact. Elizabeth stood there without any fear, asking if Hawthorne had finally woken up. Hawthorne lay on the ground, his body crushed and in immense pain. Confused, he questioned what had just happened. Suddenly, something descended from the sky. The golden dragon, so massive that the floating island they were on seemed tiny in comparison. Hawthorne, realizing the dragon's true form, was perplexed about the creature he had recently murdered, which began melting and merging back into the dragon's tail. Elizabeth, observing the scene, teased the dragon, thinking it was using its tail as a pet. She revealed that this was the Dragon Void Realm form, and she was the Golden Dragon Queen, a one-star demon king with the power to destroy the entire island with a mere hand gesture. Frightened, Hawthorne insisted it was impossible for him to lose, claiming the power of a demon king. However, before he could say more, the Golden Dragon ended him with a touch of her fingertip. With that, Hawthorne met his demise, leaving Le Ping astonished. Le Ping, surprised, questioned Elizabeth about the reality of the situation, but Elizabeth misunderstood, thinking Le Ping was pretending to have known about the golden dragon long ago. Suddenly, everything turned gold and the whole island started disappearing. Elizabeth explained to Le Ping that this space where they were wasn't real. It was just an illusion created by the dragon. After everything disappeared, everyone was floating. Le Ping was really surprised to see themselves floating in space. Elizabeth got annoyed after seeing Le Ping like this. The next moment, the dragon said something to Elizabeth in the demon language, and Elizabeth replied to him in the demon language. After hearing Elizabeth's words, the dragon started crying like a 4-year-old child, and tears started falling from her eyes. Suddenly, smoke covered the dragon's whole body, and that giant golden dragon turned into a cute loli. The dragon girl cried as she had been waiting for her master for a long time. This crybaby loli was Amelia, Elizabeth's pet. Amelia hugged Elizabeth tightly. Elizabeth looked at her and reminded her that she was already promoted to a Demon King level. Elizabeth originally didn't want to come here and wake Amelia up because she was so clingy, but Amelia caught Elizabeth's leg and while crying begged her not to leave her again. She was left for 500 years without saying a word. Of course, the lowly dragon would miss her master. In a flashback, Elizabeth discovered Amelia as an egg and used her magical power to hatch it. They made a contract, and then Elizabeth personally guided, trained, and played with Amelia. Amelia promised to serve and protect Elizabeth. As Amelia grew up, she carried Elizabeth on her back to fight evil creatures. Eventually, Elizabeth decided to rule the world to end the ongoing war. Amelia was happy for her master's success, but she noticed Elizabeth's smile fading as she became more powerful and Amelia felt less useful. While Amelia was on patrol, Elizabeth took the holy sword and set out to find the legendary hero, but she never returned. 10 years passed, and Aristotle, the minister of mankind, noticed an increase in crime since Elizabeth's disappearance. Mughal, the minister of orcs, agreed that it was hard to control the orcs without their queen, so the orc tribe decided to split up. Heimerdinger, the Minister of Dwarves, suggested taking action in their regions to stabilize the danger before the Queen's return. Twila, the Minister of Elves, wondered about Jimji's thoughts on the Queen encountering the hero, as he had been with her the longest. Jimji, the Minister of Demons, knew how powerful their Queen was and offered to search for her. Malfoy suggested dispersing and also decided to search for the Queen himself, feeling anxious about the situation. In the end, the ministers scattered everything and divided the regions. Amelia wasn't interested in the regions, she just took a bottle of wine. She went back to where Elizabeth first found her, thinking her master would come one day. Amelia waited and waited, through changing seasons and terrains for hundreds of years. Now Amelia cried with tears and snot, expressing how long she had waited. Elizabeth saw it as a positive thing, as Amelia had abandoned her playfulness and embraced meditation, helping her reach the Demon King level. Amelia pleaded once more for her master not to leave, believing the 500 years alone were meant for her to learn meditation and attain the Demon King level. Leping had interrupted their reunion and urged Elizabeth to stop discussing the past, emphasizing the need to quickly rescue Annie. Annie woke up and searched for Leping, puzzled by their surroundings as they floated in space. Leping was relieved to see Annie in good health. Although Annie insisted she was okay, she hesitated and pulled something from her bag. The apple Leping had given her, now crushed. Leping comforted her, assuring her it was not a big deal. Meanwhile, Elizabeth assumed Leping had everything under control, particularly when it came to dividing the bananas. Amelia, on the other hand, started behaving affectionately towards Elizabeth, rubbing her cheeks on her legs. Elizabeth, however, remained focused on Leping. This caught Amelia off guard, and she couldn't help but feel annoyed, questioning why her master was paying attention to Leping and not giving her a second glance. Like a cautious pet dog, Amelia had inquired about the identity of Leping. Elizabeth nonchalantly introduced Leping as the legendary hero and mentioned staying at his house during her absence. Armed with this knowledge, Amelia sought out Leping to settle both existing and newfound grievances. She harbored resentment toward him for separating her from her master for 500 years. With a friendly demeanor, Leping introduced himself to Amelia. The dragon girl, realizing she was already at the Demon King level, decided to team up with her master to take down the legendary hero. Amelia activated her Dragon King's claw and with a smile charged at Leping with the intention of ending him. Despite delivering a powerful blow, Amelia was bewildered when nothing happened and her arms returned to normal. Leping, wearing clothes resembling armor, scratched his head and apologized for not reacting in time. Amelia, in shock, realized that her attack, capable of destroying a town, had merely bounced off Leping. He reassured her, reaching out and claiming he would take the initiative. Though his appearance seemed intimidating to Amelia, she knew she could be subdued at any moment. Despite her plea for him not to take any action, Leping only reached for her hand, apologizing for not returning her handshake or was actually Dragon King's claw. It dawned on Leping why Elizabeth had been so composed since their arrival. The dragon was actually her friend. Amelia, confused by this revelation, started to question Leping's supposed danger. Elizabeth clarified that Amelia was her mount, prompting Leping to envision Elizabeth riding on Amelia's shoulders with a doubtful expression. Thanks for watching. If you liked the video, stay tuned for the next part.